welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow, the only show on Indian television where you, the MSME, get center stage. This is ET Now's special daily initiative to give MSMEs and entrepreneurs the opportunity to be front and center on every industry and area that matters to you. Tonight on the show, we bring you two influencers. First up, we're talking about the healthcare market, and I'm in conversation with Metropolis. And later on the other side of a short break, we're talking the food industry with Ranveer Brar. I caught up with Metropolis to understand how the healthcare industry in India is changing and what small players need to keep in mind if they're serving this market. Ameera Shah of Metropolis spoke to me about some things that MSME entrepreneurs should keep in mind and about her own learning and growth story. Take a listen. Thank you so much for speaking with us here on Leaders of Tomorrow, Ameera. Let's start by talking about the kind of journey and the growth really that you've seen at Metropolis. For those of our viewers who don't know, what would you like them to know about the company?
So I think we've gone through a really wonderful transformation, I think, especially in the last few years. 2015, I had a lot of shareholder issues which I cleaned up completely, and I decided post that I was going to bring in some really strong professionals who could build a rock solid company with me. So in 2016, I had a CEO who joined on board, post which together we've built a very strong team of professionals coming in from some really great organizations with a lot of great expertise. And all of them have settled in now and are all doing their own bit and driving the business. Because of this change, it's also changed the culture of the organization. We've seen it becoming much more performance driven, much more aggressive. And because of this, we've seen a huge expansion happen actually in the last 2 years. We were at about 400 centers across the group, and we are today at about 2,000 centers across the group. We had 120 labs, we're now at 150 labs, and we've done all this without really enhancing the employee count. We were at 4,000 people, we're still at the same. So what we've really tried to do is become much more productive, more efficient, more accessible to people, and I think we're really in a great position to really leapfrog, especially this next year.
We're speaking to you post the budget. Are you happy with some of the announcements we've perhaps seen? Would you have liked to see more? Healthcare, of course, is something that's always top of mind. Is there anything more you wanted to see?
So, I think the biggest positive that I've seen so far in healthcare has been that at least healthcare is now in the sort of visibility in the eye of the government. And at least we're seeing an intent to want to do things in healthcare. I don't know if you know, but in the last budget for the last 10 years, healthcare has got absolutely zero relevance. There's been no allocation of funds, there's been not even plans made. Forget about execution. So I think now at least we're beginning to see that healthcare is becoming an important aspect. So I think we needed to see that change. But key thing, of course, for everything in life is execution. And I think with the plans made of wanting to cover so many people, provide universal healthcare to all our citizens, wonderful. The question is how? Where's the money? Who's going to do the execution? Is the government really ready to be able to provide these services? In doing so, of course, this private sector would be very happy to partner with them and help them in every way possible.
So you're saying that there's a lot that the private industry can obviously do when it comes to working with the government. If you were to talk to our viewers 2 or 3 specific opportunities that exist right now in the kind of, the scenario in the economy that we're in right now for MSMEs who are looking at the healthcare space, what would it be?
So I think individual hospitals or nursing homes who have been operating in smaller towns, I think there's a big opportunity, because if there is going to be universal healthcare coverage by the government, somebody has to provide those services. I think those individual hospitals and nursing homes should enroll with the government, become part of the insurance scheme. They are lower sort of amounts per patient, but it will give them volumes which will give them a very steady state income for their hospitals. So I think that's definitely an opportunity for smaller players in healthcare. I think the other opportunities, I think we're seeing in the pharma sort of world, a lot of new online pharmacies which have come up. Regulation on that is grey, but convenience matters to people, quality matters to people. So if you're working with organizations which are focused on quality drugs and not spurious drugs, and you figure out a quick way and a convenient way to get people those drugs, I think there's an opportunity there as well. I think the diagnostic space continues to have opportunity. We're seeing an industry growth of about 10 to 12%. It's not very high at this point, but I think as the GDP and the economy grow, I think that will change as well. Leaders like us are growing obviously significantly faster from a volume growth perspective. Diagnostics is a very interesting industry because it has a lot of impact on people's lives. But it's very careful, like in everything else in healthcare, you have to be very careful to stick to the founding principles. We've stuck to the principles of quality, empathy, and integrity. People get lost in that space. And medical education, by the way, is another area of opportunity as well.
You were talking about universal healthcare coverage, and I want to just circle back to that. Even as the government is looking at pushing that actively, is there any component of that perhaps that someone in your industry that you perhaps could look at tapping into?
See, most of the citizens in India are not sick. Hospitals is one part of healthcare, and we should be focusing a lot more on wellness rather than focusing only on illness, because people go to hospitals when they get sick. What about the other 94%, 95% people who are well? We always tell the government that, look, it's better to spend money on screening people and making sure they're fine before waiting for this huge symptom to happen, because of which they have to land up in hospitals. So we wish the government would spend more money on screening programs where we could actually check whether it's anemia, diabetes, for women's health. There are lots of areas of opportunity where we could actually make some significant impact and do some real good. In the insurance program, again, it's all focused on hospitals. So it's when people get sick, when they go there, they get covered to some extent. So diagnostics will not benefit from that at this point of time unless the government increases the scope, unless the government for NCD starts doing non-communicable diseases, starts doing large amount of screenings.
Okay. You started this conversation by saying that you are increasing the number of centers that you have, but not necessarily increasing the manpower. I want to talk about the role of technology. Just how much of technology are you using at your company, and also talk to our viewers about the role that technology can play when it comes to diagnostic centers, when it comes to expansion for your industry.
I think the role, today 90% of the market is unorganized. And there's something like 1 lakh diagnostic centers across the country. We don't even actually have count because there's no registration or anything. And that is really bad for the patient because there's no minimum standard and there's no regulation. You have lots of fly-by-night operators in the market, people who are just not doing the test, people who are doing the test, half-baked, not using good technology, and the person who suffers is the patient. What the government can do is really put in that minimum standard and the regulation that requires a lab or a diagnostic center to have a certain minimum standard that they need to meet. So that the patient is not taken for granted. And I think we're going to see a lot of this market organize as well. So a lot of these unorganized guys are not able to compete at this point. Some of them are having a hard time. They're not getting volume growth. Their expenses are going up. And as this compliance regulation comes in, that will again increase their costs. So we think that this market will slowly start getting organized. The other thing what happened with GST is when GST came in, healthcare was kept out of the net, which has actually been very bad for healthcare. Because while we say that patients don't have to pay the additional 5% or whatever 12% GST, the challenge has been for healthcare providers that all our costs, we've been hit with GST, but we have not been able to pass it on to the patients. So what's landed up happening is our revenue has stayed the same. Our cost base has gone up because we are paying a higher GST on rent, a higher GST on courier, printing, everything. So our costs have increased by 5 to 10%.
And especially for equipment manufacturers.
And imports, right? So for example, all the things which are getting imported, again, there's an increase in cesses and duties. So what's happened is healthcare is getting hit from both sides. On one hand, government's telling us, make it more affordable, make it more affordable. On the other hand, expenses are going up. And I think healthcare providers are getting sandwiched in the middle. From our point of view, from Metropolis point of view, we've actually tried to make our services more and more affordable. And we've accomplished to a large extent where we've tried to keep adjusting and bundling services to provide packages and prices to patients that make it more feasible for them to take care of their health.
I saw some big headlines recently, 100 crores when it comes to capex expansion. Can you talk to us about what the plan is, what it's going to go into, how you're looking at raising these funds? Are you looking at perhaps tapping the capital markets, or will it be internal accruals?
So I think we're looking at spending probably much more than 100. We're looking at spending a large amount of money on technology over the next 5 years. A lot of money will go into building out new infrastructure, new labs, new collection centers, not only in the markets that we're strong, but also in markets that we're looking to get stronger in, which is the north and east of India. I think additionally, we've always been quite active in terms of acquisitions and M&A. Last year we did an acquisition which was about 60-70 crores odd in FY17, and I think next year again we're looking at significant outlay for further M&A. So far, I think most of our things have been done from internal accruals. That's the plan as well going forward. If anything required, we may tap the debt markets to really be able to take some debt in the OpCo. We don't have any debt at all today. We're completely debt free. So yeah, I think that's the plan as of now.
Thanks very much for speaking with us, Amelia.
Thanks so much.
Thanks. Time for a break. On the other side, we'll talk with Ranveer Brar to understand how the hospitality and the food market is changing. Do stay tuned. I caught up with celebrity chef Ranveer Brar to understand really how the market is changing when it comes to hospitality, what small unbranded businesses should keep in mind if they're looking for growth, and also about his own personal growth and journey. Take a listen. Thank you very much for coming down to our studios tonight, Ranveer. Let's start by talking about your businesses. You're someone who's very closely associated with the food industry, with the restaurant business. So let's start there.
Well, it's a great space to be in. Like I always say, food and everything around food. This is the most brilliant time to be in this business. Obviously, for the economic reasons, I think dining out dining in, everything around food has evolved in the last 5 years more so. But other than that, it's a great time to be in this business because it's become a lot more rounded, so as to say. It's just become a lot more engaging, involving, and interacting in a lot of places. And that, so it's a good, fun time to be in the food space.
Okay. What would you say is the one thing that has perhaps changed the most?
I think the approach and the way we look at food and food people has changed.
Okay.
From it being a necessity to it being a stress buster, reliever, from it being a mere, I need to eat something because I'm hungry, to it being an experience.
Sure. Okay. So you're saying the way we see food people is changing. For an MSME who's watching this show, are there courses that you think is necessary for them to be taking? Because it's not just about how you're cooking the food, it's also about how you're presenting it, it's about how you're interacting with your customers. Do you see enough of that understanding happening in small businesses?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Yes, because the good thing about food is that the entry barrier is very low. You can really start very small. Yeah. You can start from your backyard and make it big. And a lot of intangibles are key drivers. Passion is a key driver. Connect is a key driver. However, no, because a lot of times people, because of it being a low entry barrier, people tend to neglect the basics.
What are the basics?
The basics essentially are an understanding of the product, which is food, which requires more than just eating it. So even a basic 3 or a 6 month cooking or a patisserie course for me is a must for every food and beverage entrepreneur.
Okay.
If you're in the business of wine, you got to spend a couple of months at a vineyard lugging it out. So the first basic is understanding the product. Doing a short course wherein you're interacting with the product firsthand, not just selling it. The second is understanding aesthetics. Our business is all about evolving aesthetics, whether it is aesthetics on a plate or aesthetics being created in an environment or merely the box that you're sending your brownies in. Aesthetics, an understanding of aesthetics is very, very important. Some people are gifted with it, but the others, a basic design course is good enough.
Okay, so you're saying low entry barrier, and I want to talk about how this market is so crowded. For a business that is in this space, yes, the kind of product that you offer perhaps is being offered by someone else, but how do you differentiate yourself? I want to understand, how do we do marketing and branding for a small business, and then I will come and talk about how social media perhaps can be one of your best friends.
See, in the food business, in any other business, but particularly in the food business, the word USP holds a lot of value and strength. A restaurant, a person, a place can make money, be famous, be a viable business venture purely based on just one dish sometimes, right? So it's important to have USPs and signatures. It's important to understand the importance of having a core dish or two, and then everything just gets worked, works around it. It's important to believe in the concept and then translate that concept into everything from the spoon to the plate, to the flooring, to the staff, to the uniforms.
Okay, so social media is important in today's day and age, whether you're a big business or a small business, but more so if you're a small business because of the advantage of, it having a low-cost barrier. How have you used social media to build a brand for yourself, further your brand, and also maybe some of the common mistakes you see being made on social media by people in your industry that you want to advise our viewers, don't do this?
I think in the food space, social media is right now the prime driver of decision, because food decisions are usually very instantaneous. Dining decisions are very, hey, where am I going this evening? And you decide in the next 5 minutes, from your cell phone. Whatever you're looking for, whether it's recipes, ingredients, knowledge, trivia, that's also very instant. And that's why social media and food really go hand in hand. And I just kept that in mind. I just kept that in mind. And I just wanted to first understand what will I look for instinctively, and then to be able to provide that before one could look for that. Small businesses, like you said, the mistake that gets made is the mistake of templation.
Okay.
I do that a lot of times when I feel that you get into this mode of templation, and there's a certain predictability that sets in into your social media. That predictability is not good. Food has to be spur of the moment. It has to be very, hey, you really should know what's coming up today. So I say keep it 20%, 25% templated for people to be familiar with. So if you have a Wednesday property, do it on Wednesdays. But then other than that, be spontaneous, be yourself. Even food's very personal. Until it's presented as something personal, it doesn't connect.
Okay. Well, we started this conversation talking about how the industry has changed. One of the changes that we are still grappling with as a country, of course, is GST. Has that had much of an impact on your industry?
It did initially. Like all businesses. We for a month and a half, we really suffered because the consumer didn't really know how how to react to what had happened. Also, perception-wise, 18 and 28% slabs were really high for the consumer to see at the end of because you obviously add the tax and then you add a basic tip or a service charge, and you end up paying 50% more sometimes the value of your meal. So it did make a difference, and I think it's great that it's come down to 5%, the input tax credit going away. But primarily, I think it was purely perception, and the fact that it's back to 5%, it's great for the restaurant business.
Okay, so we have spoken about regulation, we have spoken about skilling. I want to talk about funding. 99% of a business and entrepreneur's journey really of being an entrepreneur, setting up their own business, is about funding. How easy or difficult has it been?
I'd say from where we were 10 years ago, when it was perceived to be a high-risk business, and nobody would, really entertain a lot of funding conversation in the restaurant space. We've come a long way. As I always say, housing and food is where the capital today is interested in and looking up to. The whole world is looking up to it. So funding is not a big problem. I think what is important is strength of concept and proof of concept.
Sure.
And that is where a lot of startups I feel tend to work on. Once the ability to stand by your concept, believe in it, and the ability to make it work, not just to get funded, but to be able to work with the proposition that's inherently viable and profitable. I think that is what startups need to work on.
Okay. So as we're winding down this conversation then, two final questions to you. One, How different is a metro compared to tier 2 and tier 3 when it comes to the restaurant business? Most of our small businesses, most of our viewers are based outside of the metros. So would you say they're inherently very different when it comes to your industry as a market, as consumers who are recipient? And if yes, then how do our viewers effectively tap these, tier 3 and tier 4 towns?
I think it's a very different market. I think, as I always say, our country is not just a country, it's a collection of ideas, ideologies across all strata and spectrums. Okay. And as I travel courtesy television or whatever I do, I realize that although there's this one common thing that unites all of us in the food business, which is an Indian's passion for food, yet the palate is very different. Okay. The expectations are very different, and a lot of times, I'd say 70% of the times, something that works in a tier 1 is going to kickstart itself in a tier 3 or a tier 4, but not really be viable and sustainable.
Okay. And that would include the prices as well.
Yeah, it would include the prices. Also, it would include the palate sensibilities. Okay. Of, I'll give you a small example. Tier 4 and tier 3 already eats food that's inherently and indigenously healthy. If you go to a health concept with them, they're doing that. They're leading a much healthier lifestyle, a much more active lifestyle, with a lot of, like I said, indigenous healthy ingredients. So health as a pitch, you can't really base a concept based on health. You can accentuate a concept with health. So and that's where sensibilities kind of vary, and we need to just keep that in mind when we're moving tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4.
Okay. So last question to you then: what's the future looking like for you?
Well,
what are you excited about, basically?
So for me, I think the next year, for me this year is going to be a lot about cooking for myself. I think as a food brand, sometimes you need to get even more personal and connected for people to connect to. Being a chef, sometimes you really want to control and evolve while you're in control. So that's what the next year is for me. Just one restaurant, do it well.
And wish you all the very best for that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming by.
Pleasure.
Thank you. That's our show tonight. If you have any questions for us, do remember you can always email us at leadersoftomorrowtimesgroup.com. If you want to be featured here on the show, you can get in touch with us. Tweet at me personally at Sunanda_J or LOT_ET now. You can also leave your comments for us on Leaders of Tomorrow on ET now. Thank you very much for watching. Have a good night.